Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joel Mitchell. How are you today, Joel?
I'm feeling a little bit sleepy.
Yeah.
So my son lately has been waking up sort of the early hours of the morning and getting into bed with me. And a couple of nights ago he did that, and he had his headphones on because he likes to, he'll listen to an audiobook to help him get to sleep. So that was fine. But then last night he came in at 12:30, which is quite early. But he brought a physical book with him. I don't know what he thought he was going to do with that physical book while he was in my bed in the dark.
Yeah.
So I sent him back to his bedroom and told him to just try harder to get back to sleep.
Because that works, yeah.
Well, I turned on the air conditioner for him and that sort of thing. So I think he just, maybe had quite the right sleeping conditions. But he said he hadn't slept up until that point, so that wasn't great.
Yeah, likely story though, right?
Oh no, there was evidence. Like he'd been doing some crafting. Not like magic, but actual arts and crafts. Yeah, he's not a wizard. Just to be clear for everybody, for all the listeners out there who might have been confused. So no, yeah, I think he had actually just not been asleep yet, because he was pretty wired.
I'll have to bring a book in to share. I got it for my birthday from my 6-year-old from Jimmy Reese. And it's just basically all of the excuses you can think of for why I can't sleep or and I've heard all of them, I swear. Like there's so many. And I read it to my 6-year-old. Like, you've done that one.
Yeah.
I'm too hot. I'm too thirsty. I'm too cold.
Oh yeah. I'm hungry. Yeah.
Too good. All right. Well, look, this isn't a parenting show.
No.
I believe it's a psych health and safety show. So we should probably introduce our guest.
Good idea.
So really great to have this person on. Very interesting background. So in his youth, he spent 6 months meditating in the Malaysian jungle. Compelled to help others improve their well-being, he spent 10 years studying and practicing traditional Chinese medicine in Beijing. Upon returning to Australia, he completed a master's degree in coaching psychology from the University of Sydney. He now serves as a global head of wellbeing for Xero. Welcome to the podcast, Lucas Finch.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
No, really stoked to have you on, mate. Really love your work and what you're doing over there at Xero, and can't wait to share a bit about what you're doing with the listeners today.
Yeah, well, it's exciting to be here. I've been a fly on the wall in your podcast for a while, so it's good to meet in person.
Yeah, awesome.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of podcasts, other than ours, what others do you like to listen to?
Ooh, I am a fan of Esther Perel. How's Work specifically? I will get into the Tim Ferriss podcast, the Tim Ferriss show. And if I'm looking to unwind, I do enjoy Krista Tippett's On Being as well. That's a nice one to tune into.
Yeah, I have to check that one out. I'm running out of the tune out or kind of wind down kind of podcasts.
Yeah, no, they're good to have on the list. Some ones there that we haven't heard from other guests before, so that's good for our listeners who are keeping notes. So tell us about your professional career then. It sounds like you've had a bit of a winding path to get where you are.
Yeah, it really has been a crooked old path, but I've enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. It started that meditation. I spent 6 months. That sort of started it in the silent meditation in the Malaysian jungle. And that was a time where I took some time out to think about my career path and obviously just practice meditation and sort of help build that self-regulation muscle, which really sort of needed some firming up. I was probably drinking heavily from the cup of life in the couple of years before that, and enabled me to then return and do studies and really explore this world of wellbeing. So I've been tinkering around in all sorts of places since then.
So how do you go from meditating in the jungle to head of wellbeing at Xero?
I sent in the application while in the jungle, and no, I was joking. It was, I had decided, actually, I had a shoulder injury and that I'd been receiving acupuncture for. And I thought acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine seemed an interesting mix between sort of art and craft, art and science. And I went in, and it was just a wonderful world into the wide array of the different alternative medicine therapies and ways people approach well-being. And it also meant that I was exposed to a lot of questionable practices and claims. And so I left TCM and studying that undergrad degree with a real respect for scientific imperialism, and as well as the wisdom of like the imperialistic practice of Chinese medicine, some of those, that deep body of wisdom, and some of the, for those of you who haven't really been exposed to some of the theory, even though it's not really something I kind of purport and drive at Xero, there's a huge amount of systems thinking and interdependent thinking and some really wisdom that's part of that field of medicine that certainly was sort of formative in the way I saw the world. So yeah, so that's where I started. And actually wasn't 10 years in, I spent 3 months as an intern in Chinese medicine in a hospital, and I had then developed practice and health facility in Sydney, and worked as a trainer. And there was this point in which I realized that I was trying to tell people what they needed to do. Like, you need to, eat this vegetable and move this way. And I came across coaching through receiving coaching, and then I did a number of studies in coaching, and just changed my view in terms of how to really enact behavior change. And specifically, I guess, it was a subject I did the Masters of Coaching Psych at Sydney Uni, and Dr. Michael Kavanagh runs a subject called Groups, Teams and Systems, which looks at the systemic, the way we're affected and how our well-being is really dependent, not only like on our individual circumstances, but those, groups, teams and systems we're embedded in. So that's where I sort of started to look at workplace well-being.
Yeah. Now, Lucas, as a founder of a tech company myself, I really like good tech, and I got to say that we do use Xero. But for people who aren't familiar with the product, what is Xero?
Right. Well, Xero is a cloud-based accounting platform. I actually came to use Xero first as a customer, because I will admit that doing my BAS regularly was not my strong suit. And so what I found that it could let me do was focus on my work and clinical work, and it automates and it makes business easy and beautiful. It's very easy to use, and it's intuitive, and it enabled me to focus on doing my best work. So yeah, it's a great platform. I highly recommend anyone who's self-employed or in small business to check it out.
Yeah. And how large is the business now?
Well, we're reaching, there's over 2 million customers, and we're operating in 7 different regions, 7 different countries. And it's been, so we're sort of on an exponential rapid growth period. It's a really exciting time to be, part of this company as it grows into new markets. And it's really identified an ability to add value to small business beyond just simple accounting. So it's exciting.
And so tell us about then, what does the Head of Global Wellbeing do for Xero?
So Xero's had a really strong and Xero's had a really strong path of advocacy for wellbeing long before I was there, and that extends to both, like supporting customers. So Xero's got a history of extending like its EAP program, XAP, to ZAP in New Zealand to the customers, as well as our leader in ANZ, Rachel Powell, who has advocated and sort of been, she's also studied high-level positive psych. So she's sort of made the tenets of pos psych available to our customers as well. So we've got this inside-out philosophy. My role is to develop systems, practices, and capabilities across the organization. And I have developed a wellbeing strategy for Xero, and it really looks at how to, using an integrated model, looking at how to support, protect, and promote wellbeing across the workforce.
Yeah, no, we're definitely a fan of the integrated model, and it sounds like our listeners are too, because Tony's episode now, I think, is officially the third most listened to, only a month in, since it's been broadcast. We'll soon surpass Wade Needham's episode, I think.
Bad luck, Wade. You've been holding that number 2 spot for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Who's number one?
Us, of course.
Yeah, us.
The
Episode
first
one.
Episode one. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey.
The
I
mystery
think
guest.
I wouldn't be surprised if Tony surpasses episode 1 as well.
Yeah, the way he's going, that's a pretty high growth rate.
Yeah, we won't hold it against him.
No. But tell us more, Lucas, regarding your process of rolling out more of a systematic approach. I mean, we do have a number of listeners who get concerned that they're not an organizational psychologist, and so therefore they feel they shouldn't be playing in this area. And I really liked it when we spoke previously about how you're able to draw in external expertise to really provide some guidance around it. But I'd really love to hear the story again from you, or for you to share with our listeners regarding the process that you went to from zero basically to having a pretty good system in place.
Yeah, specifically in terms of the work health and safety psych risk management aspect.
Yeah, specifically that. Yeah.
So yeah, the way we approached it was I was fairly certain that we needed some sort of baselining. We rolled out the PSC12 and got the data, but the hypothesis was that it'd be predictive of individual and organizational level outcomes, and it was great to see that reflected in the data. But we knew that there'd be a heat map generated from this study, and that certainly my proposition wasn't, if people were in the red, to fly in with stretchy pants and fruit bowls and try and save them that way, but we'd look to lean into what their experience of work has been, and so we've been partnering with Australian Psychological Services, so David Burrows and Laura Kirby, who have been just really instrumental in helping do a few things, both at a tactical level, like lean in and undertake a wellbeing climate review. So we call the PSC12 the wellbeing climate. We also ask some sort of engagement and burnout questions. And so they've been leaning in, understanding people's experience of work, and then creating action plans based on some solution-focused discussions I've been having across those cohorts that were identified with lower wellbeing climate. And so that's been really well received. And in addition to that, we've been developing a fluency of language across our most senior leaders, including our CEO and our executive teams, in the levers available. One of the frameworks we use is the job demand control support model, Carasex model, and so yeah, I don't have to be an expert in that, but we certainly just what's been really useful is operationalizing the core tenets of that theory to make it accessible for our leaders. And so one of the ways I like to think about that, we're talking about flow theory before with Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and his view of like you needing this right balance between the resources or skills you have and the demands or the challenges of your environment, right? And so I'm not sure if I am bastardizing this too much, but the way I was explaining it to the leaders is like, imagine if you're an eagle flying, you look up an eagle, this thing is like majestic, right? It's got like keen eyes and a sharp beak, and you look at it and it's like, it's impressive. And it's impressive because it has to be able to dive down and, fly down hundreds of meters to catch a field mouse in the middle of a plane. So its skills are perfectly matched to the challenges of its environment, or the resources it has are perfectly matched to the demands of its environment. And so using just a very simple model like that, and then we would lean in and explore, well, how does that look like in our environment, and what skills and resources and challenges and demands are true of our environment.
Yeah. So how did you communicate that? Was that a board presentation or exec presentation?
Yeah, I came in flying like an eagle. It was mostly theatrical. No, we had a.
I can imagine a Gavin Belson-esque presentation. Like,
yep.
Observe the elephant.
Yeah, it's been a conversation that's been unfolding on a number of levels, both with that senior leadership group and our senior leaders of 800 so, and developing in eLearn, which operationalizes a number of videos, helping just to make the language around some of the psychosocial factors and the job demand control support model, develop that fluency. So
Yeah. And how are you measuring success of, I guess, your wellbeing and psychosocial safety climate type interventions?
So at a high level, we'll retest the PSC 12 and the wellbeing climate again in March. And in the interim, there's more local and maybe predictive lead indicators looking at, so we're developing dashboards that can help lean into looking at things like attrition and absenteeism, so we're able to identify both any positive changes off the back of interventions, or any sort of using those as predictive of areas for future reviews. So in this level, in the protect space, that's how we're measuring and influencing.
I mean, for our listeners, that should be encouraging to hear, because they're often asked, I guess, why should we be doing this? Why should we be interested in wellbeing? And sometimes it's hard to pull out an ROI figure. What's the direct benefit? But if you look at the cost of replacing employees, I think that can probably help people explain to leaders why wellbeing and psych health and safety is a bit more important than just purely this is a warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that turnover, especially with the way that things seem to be heading at the moment, with everybody talking about the Great Resignation, the implications for turnover, I think, and if we've got that some of that data to say, yes, we can show that there is actually a relationship between improving psychosocial safety climate and reducing turnover, that's going to be a significant driver for a lot of organisations.
Right. And I love this conversation, because it's my biggest driver to obviously promote well-being, and to see it reflected in some of this data is super encouraging, and especially for like a fast-paced high demand environment, to see what we've essentially established is that the well-being climate is protective of people's well-being and also those organizational outcomes. So just creating that climate, and we could talk about how you then go and enact that, but just creating a climate where people feel that well-being is seriously considered and looked after, is good for the bottom line as well.
So how do you continue to keep PSC high and wellbeing looked after through so much change?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. There's it's certainly not going to be a single silver bullet, that's for sure. And thankfully, we're building up a culture where one of the values is being #human, is really not just something on the wall people live. And so it's having this value which extends into supportive leadership behavior, which we understand is one of those great things that helps offset demands, and it's really well lived at Xero. So helping operationalize and give some more skills and tools to leaders to how to lean in and have those critical conversations the right way during periods of change is just a capability which I think is really valuable in this current climate. So I think generic capabilities like that go a long way, and specifically leaning in, having what makes up people's experience of work. And we're these conversations aren't new, but people are in increased meeting load since COVID, and increased screen time, and distracted by technology, and maybe not having enough time to do their deep work and focus and really make that unique contribution. And so we're partnering with some cognitive psychologists to establish some baselines in these areas, and rolling out interventions that looks at really clever ways to lean into improved meeting load and how to reduce meetings, intelligently, how to increase deep work and focus time, looking at some both team and organizational level interventions in that area, and looking at prioritization, both at an individual level and of course organizationally, looking at how to get really crystal clear on what you have to do each day, develop that sense of control. So there's some of the key things. Oh, I've got one more thing. Can I mention that as well? I suppose in a high change environment, one of the strategies, so that we're looking at, in addition to support, protect, and promote, the strategy looks at an individual level, like me, at a team and community level, we, and at an organizational level, us. So all of those things I mentioned and the wellbeing are more systemic in nature. The wellbeing climate sits in that sort of like that team element, really like helping to identify and lean into people's experience of work at a team level. And then at an individual level, it's been looking at, well, how do you build your best day? We have a really strong belief that people can come to Xero and be included and do the best work of their life. And so, well, what does that look like at a daily level? Like the goals, habits, rituals about how you build energy, like build your resources, and then how you spend energy in terms of, meeting those demands of your home and life, looking at things like habits and healthy wellbeing habits. And so that relates back to the high level Carasset framework, because it's looking at, well, how do we increase that sense of control over the things that you can influence, and the habits often fall into that category.
So you're talking really about this sort of systems-based approach to workplace mental health and wellbeing, which is fantastic. I think, you'll be familiar with the focus of a lot of mental health initiatives in the workplace tend to be reactive and, focused on encouraging people to seek help once they're symptomatic of mental illness, for example. So sort of, the stigma reduction and awareness raising, and then, providing support via EAP or, your sort of workplace rehabilitation providers and that sort of thing. What process did you follow to help leaders shift their mindset from thinking about it as an individual sort of treatment approach to actually looking at a systematic prevention approach?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a few ways. I mean, one would just be visually, when rolling out at the very start, the idea of the wellbeing climate, which is visually, I've got it here. There's the job demand control model, which looks at resources and demands and flowing into individual and sort of systemic level impacts. And so that chart is very useful in describing people. Like, of course, we want to be influencing things upstream and, not reacting or even, responding to things, but preventing by the design of work. And certainly the increase in cultural awareness of those systemic workplace factors contributing to burnout. I think there's been a really sort of like aligned with my 12 months at Xero, being a sort of global increase in the appreciation of the fact that workplace factors play a role in that area. And so that's been, useful as well to sort of say, well, that's what we're influencing with this aspect of the program.
So were the leaders sort of already thinking about this from a systems perspective, or was this a real sort of shift in their mental model?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that would be the one slight tweak to the existing understanding of wellbeing that's happened since I've come in, to understand that. I think the utilization of a integrated model approach, which sort of looks at, we support, we protect, and we promote. So there's different aspects, and that wellbeing isn't about the fruit bowls and yoga classes as much as like in how we do business. And so it's like, right, it's all of that stuff. And then using the Carasset model or the PSC12, the psychosocial safety climate model, to explain, well, how does that look in terms of primary, secondary, and tertiary interventions, and understanding how to get upstream.
So did you experience any challenges with getting leaders to sort of understand the difference between a reactive approach and a proactive approach?
Could you ask that question again? Sorry.
Did you experience any difficulties with getting leaders to understand sort of the difference between that reactive, treatment-based approach versus that proactive preventative approach?
I think people get it. And I think this is it's been great to be able to come in, like I said, with this I feel Xero is really mature in the way it understands wellbeing. It understands culture, and it understands how these creating a climate and these factors are upstream and a determinant of individuals able to reach their potential, and companies doing the same. So I think that it's sort of part of the DNA already, and I think greatly assisted by the fact that perhaps people have been having EAPs for a long period of time, are seeing this rise in workplace burnout, and ready to look at other solutions in terms of how we can impact wellbeing at work.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm just thinking about the episode that we did with Kat, which hasn't aired yet, but where she was talking about organizations being at different levels of maturity and readiness for different approaches. So it sounds like Xero was probably further along that maturity curve, if you like, in terms of what they were actually ready to adopt and where they were in terms of their learning or knowledge about this.
Yeah, when I've rolled this similar approach out at Sydney Water, where I was previously, it's you can use a balance between the carrot and the stick in terms of the OH&S requirements, which obviously is been increased in prevalence since the release of the ISO standard, or the carrot in terms of we can good work is good for people, and we can really improve individual and organizational level outcomes. It's my narrative at Xero has been primarily around good work is good for people, because that's part of the organizational, the way people are really looking at things.
Yeah, so it's more about aligning your messaging or your selling points with the values and the culture of the organization.
Right, I think that's exactly what it's about, and that's kind of hopefully what some workplace wellbeing interventions do, is they marry up and just take a step forward from current cultural and values and the work that's been done, and extend a little bit more in a way that enables change. Yeah.
So for listeners currently working on a business case, what are your organization's not their espoused values, but what are the things that actually make drive decision making and build your business case around those? That's a great takeaway.
Yeah, it's interesting how you've kind of progressed it so quickly. I think there at Xero, Lucas, and it's great to have that support, obviously, from leadership to be able to do that. I was actually asked to deliver a webinar recently, and there was a question at the end asking for some advice regarding what do I do if leadership is hostile towards this, and I'm like, well, probably go to another organization would be the easy one. It sounds like you've got a lot of support, which is fantastic. How would you answer that question, Lucas, if someone was in a position like you where, first of all, probably a company that was hostile towards this probably wouldn't have a global head of health and wellbeing.
Probably not, no.
But let's say that you're passionate about health and wellbeing, maybe you're a health and safety professional or in HR or OD or something like that, and you're coming across roadblocks from leadership. How do you convince them that this is something worthwhile investing in if it's not part of the values?
Well, I think that every business values productivity, and that there's certainly understanding how to frame the message in a way that the person can receive it would be the number one piece. And so if the business doesn't value well-being, well, what do they value? And how can you shift the narrative because I can assure you that everyone would enjoy increased productivity, retention, all of these aspects. And it's a wonderful time to be in this industry, because you can talk in languages and to values that most companies would resonate with.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic, the level of expertise that you've been able to bring in to also help drive this. How did you convince leadership to allow you to work with the likes of David and Laura and Maureen?
Well, I guess thankfully they were very trusting, and I feel very grateful that they've been able to, enable me to bring these people in to their thought leadership and essentially test these models, especially the PSC, and be able to show that they work in a workplace. So I think that speaks to the trust and the place that this role was given by that Xero leadership team.
Yeah, I'm interested though. How did you pitch it? Like, did you say what to get them across the line?
So in terms of the advocacy, it's a good question. How did I pitch it? I explained the integrated model and the fact that there was a real benefit for leaning into the Xero Protect, and that there was this evidence-based model that was, that I sort of hung my hat on it, said that if we measure this and we can show that this will improve individual and organizational level outcomes. And so people did this at the last work, well, fill your boots. Let's try it out. So you sort of got to put yourself on the line a little bit, and it was shown to be effective. And in terms of partnering with Australian Psychological Services, it was a no-brainer because they're leaders in the field and helping. Like I said, I was started as an individual contributor, and so being able to bring in world-class experts like that to be able to operationalize the strategies just makes good business sense.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good evidence of the value of bringing in external subject matter expertise when you don't necessarily have it internally. Not that you don't know what you're doing, I guess you clearly do, but it just it helps maybe to get to the point quicker. And obviously, in a company that's changing as rapidly as Xero, it's probably worthwhile, doing things that help you to get to where you want to quicker, rather than trying to do it on your own.
That's right, and they. Both Dave and Laura have pitched from the start. The model is, highly collaborative, and also with the view to develop an internal capability within our HR or PX team, where we're training up this group of people to be able to deliver these reviews autonomously. And it might take a period of time, but that's the view. So it's sort of a healthy non-dependent relationship, but it's great to be able to leverage their expertise, and like I said, it's been so valuable.
Yeah, it's great that David and Laura are doing that. Yeah, you do hear some horror stories, but it's definitely aligned with our philosophy. Let's teach people to fish. It's going to be much better for long-term sustainable outcomes.
Yeah, I think from an acceptance perspective across the workforce as well, sometimes having that external expertise come in gives it a view of credibility that maybe wouldn't necessarily be there if it was just viewed as an internal only initiative.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about having speed for impact. Being able to bring someone in there rather than having to try and convince people softly, gently. Let's just actually bring people in who've done this at many other large companies before and can speak to the benefits.
100%. I think it's and what I love about the integrated model specifically is that it showcases how you can draw from so many a wide range of disciplines. And I'm certainly as a person who's implementing in a workplace, that I'm like a pig in mud, because it sort of demonstrates that you can really draw on a wide variety of fields like organizational psychology, cognitive psychology, organizational development. There's so many fields that you can draw on to help influence the wellbeing climate.
Well, Lucas, you're doing an amazing job there at Xero, and obviously it's going to be a challenging time as the business continues to grow rapidly, but it's great to hear that you're getting some support. If you had to think about the future now, what would some of your hopes be for the future of workplace mental health?
I feel like there's a piece around language that I think is really valuable. I think that simplifying, I think that my efforts would be looking to find ways to simplify and gain a common language across people, where these models are demystified and accessible to people across workplaces. I think that would be a huge win, to see that fluency of the way that people talk about their experience of work and are able to name it to tame it, name it to influence these factors. I think that getting that level of literacy would be, like small but incredibly powerful change. So it would be my number one call out.
Yeah, we've been talking about this maturity model internally lately. And in fact, on our last episode with Kat that would air just before this one, we spoke about it as well. And I really see that as probably the next level from where there is a focus on just the individual being responsible for self-care. And maybe the company does provide, individual resources, whether it's a mindfulness app or EAP. But then the next level is, hey, this is actually a shared responsibility between employer and employee. And the least we can do, if we're not going to mitigate all sources of work-related stress, is to provide the education and give people the language to understand these things, as you say, and make that more of a mandatory approach, as you would with any other occupational risk or hazard that hasn't been successfully mitigated. So, I think language is incredibly important.
So, do you have any advice that you'd like to offer to our listeners who might be thinking about making a move into the psych health and safety field of work?
I would start by spending 6 months in silent meditation in the jungle of Malaysia. That's definitely
a very practicable step.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a high bar to follow that one. Yeah. It's could exclude a few people. I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that what I've loved is coming in from a diverse background and being able to lean in. I think you have to be curious, surround yourself with the right people who and evidence-based models that really are showing that they're doing great work in organizations and being effective. And I think that would be my two suggestions. Stay curious and surround yourself with the right people.
And meditate.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, on that, was that a 6 months silent meditation?
Right. Yeah. You could speak to the head monk once a week, but he was largely spoke Malaysian, so it was sort of an awkward silence rather than a meditative silence at that point. But it really did. It was a profound experience. And, as a 21-year-old, I remember leaving there. I caught the train out. There was the experience of leaving this meditation hall and on the way to Thailand. And I remember just sitting there, and there was a buzz of carts going up and down the aisles, and people were moving around. It was like a very stimulating experience. But I remember just sitting back and feeling my belly rise and fall, and I guess it's that sense of control or autonomy or ability to self-regulate was this beautiful gift I got from that time. So I've been a big advocate of meditative practice since then.
Yeah, I can imagine the sensory overload, like you say.
Yeah, it would be jarring. Yeah.
Great. Well, Lucas, it's been fantastic to have you on. Thank you so much for being able to share. Hopefully, we're able to get the permission to share as much of this episode as possible, because you have been able to give, I think, our listeners a really good practical insight about, if you're doing this role internally, what are some of the things that you need to be mindful of, and how do you create change and impact? So thank you so much. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It's been great to have the opportunity.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, listeners. Remember, we do record these things over Zoom, and Lucas did do the benefit of wearing a hat today to cover up his mottled hair, because he hasn't had a haircut probably in the last 3 months living in Sydney. We do also put small clips on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page, so do feel free to check out some of the clips that will come out from this episode as well. And while you're over on LinkedIn, feel free to connect with myself and Joelle. It sounds like Lucas likes surrounding himself with like-minded professionals as well, so I'm sure he won't mind you reaching out to him as well if you have any questions following this conversation. So that brings us to the end, listeners. We'll catch you next episode.